Take another step closer and I'll shoot. I think this sums up the Democrats in 2020. The Nevada caucuses showed liberals and lefties are clamoring for a socialist, not a Democrat, to go up against the lying, gutter-fighting incumbent who's going to be calling Sanders Bolshevik Bernie in the general election. The Las Vegas debate prompted me to make a sketch of my own impression of what we're going through. My circular firing squad won't put any illustrators out of business, but the idea sums up what the Democrats are doing to each other while the emperor-in-chief relentlessly demolishes our form of government and all its operational protocols every week and every day. The Democrats are woefully unprepared to stop him because they're too busy shooting at each other over pie-in-the-sky policy proposals. They say nothing about how they will heal the nation and restore our form of government. Bernie Sanders illustrates the sorry shape of the National Democratic Party. Their leading candidate is a lifelong socialist, not a Democrat. And he makes it clear he wants to overthrow the established Democratic Party. At the Nevada debate, Pete Buttigieg hit it on the head.
Let's put forward somebody who's actually a Democrat. Look.
Earlier in the week, U.S. intelligence officials briefed Sanders that Russia is meddling in the Democratic primaries to help him win the nomination. Sanders' response? The American Republican and Democratic Party establishments are out to get him. On the night before the Nevada voting, Sanders tweeted this: I've got news for the Republican establishment. I've got news for the Democratic establishment. They can't stop us. It's important to read that tweet carefully and understand the significance of what Sanders is saying. The Democratic establishment can't stop us. That's not the comment of a man who identifies with the party and the people he's manipulating to run for president. Bernie Sanders is not and never was a Democrat. He's a lifelong socialist. He dreamed up the term democratic socialist so he could leech off of a main political party to run for president. Bluntly put, Bernie Sanders wants the United States to become a socialist republic. No amount of spin can change that. Joe Lockhart, Bill Clinton's press secretary, immediately challenged the Sanders tweet with one of his own. The Democratic establishment gave us civil rights, voting rights, the assault weapons ban, Social Security, and Medicare. What have you done, Senator? The answer is nothing. He hasn't been responsible for a single major piece of legislation since he went to Congress nearly 30 years ago. Over the years, Sanders has expressed admiration for communist socialist dictatorships such as Russia, Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. He wants to change our capitalist economy, the biggest in the world, to socialism. The major socialist/communist economies are China, Cuba, Vietnam, and Laos. All of them are dictatorships. Sanders is in the Senate as an independent. He started calling himself a democratic socialist because he needed to insinuate himself into a main political party to have a chance of becoming president. After Nevada, Bernie Sanders is the clear leader in the polls about the Democratic presidential wannabes. In many ways, Sanders is an extremist outsider, just as our criminal president was in 2016. Sanders and his rabid supporters want a revolution, just like the president and his Tea Party Kool-Aid drinking cult followers. He never tires of criticizing capitalism while pushing socialism. He keeps daydreaming of a socialist workers' paradise. Sanders doesn't say we need to fix capitalism. He wants to replace it. He always has, just as any lifelong socialist would. Sanders' sloganeering is the same as it was in the 1980s. He's a broken record about the glories of socialism and the evils of capitalism. As the Bernie bros sit around campfires, toasting marshmallows and getting teary-eyed while they sing Kumbaya, a harsh reality is about to smack them in the face. There are very few sure bets in this world, but here's one. The president and the Republicans are going to hammer Bolshevik Bernie relentlessly about his big tax-spending love of socialism and government ownership of the economy. The president and his cult are going to remind voters over and over and over that Bernie Sanders can be called Pinko Bernie. I should explain to starry-eyed millennials that pinko is a term dating back to 1925. It refers to left-wing communist sympathizers who are not actual communists. Pinkos relish the destruction of capitalism, but not the dictatorial aspects of communist regimes. The conservative right will link the second-rate economies of Russia, Cuba, and North Korea to Bernie Sanders as examples of the failed system of government he wants to install in America. Consider this recent observation by Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo, a Democrat, about the prospects of Bernie Sanders being the Democratic nominee.
I don't think he can beat President Trump, so that's a high concern. I think most Americans want a capitalistic structure, but one that works for them. Capitalism, as it's playing out, is not working well, right? Too many people are poor, too many people are working full-time poor, and that's a problem. We have to fix it. Socialism isn't the answer. The American people, I think, will reject that in November, and so I just think it's the wrong direction.
The average American voter will think so too when the president and the Republicans point out the cost of Sanders' policy daydreams. Ron Brownstein, a CNN commentator and writer for The Atlantic magazine, notes budget analysts peg the Sanders transition from capitalism to socialism at $60 trillion, or double the size of the current U.S. government.
He is proposing spending increases 30 times as large as Hillary Clinton ran on in 2016, 15 times as large as Obama ran on in 2008, and 2.5 times as large as McGovern in 72, or the actual increase in New Deal spending, according to an historical analysis of these other programs by Larry Summers, who was the top economic advisor to Obama, Treasury Secretary for Clinton.
The bigot-in-chief is certain to point out Bernie Sanders is a Jew. The Roman Catholicism of John F. Kennedy was an issue in the 1960 election. Sanders' Jewishness is certain to be an issue in the 2020 election. It will be pointed out that Bernie Sanders, the lover of socialism, honeymooned in Russia. He can be seen shirtless, drinking, and singing "This Land Is Your Land" with a bunch of Russians after visiting a communal hot tub followed by a cold shower. Last but not least, Bernie Sanders had a heart attack on the campaign trail. He's refused to release his medical records despite promising to do so. In one of the presidential debates, our gutter-dwelling president is sure to say something outrageous and infuriating, then urge Bolshevik Bernie to calm down so he doesn't have another heart attack, this time on live national television. As sure as you can say, "Make America White Again," the liar-in-chief is going to point out all of this and more if Bernie Sanders is the Democratic nominee. In 2016, the Republican Party was sabotaged by a right-wing extremist. In 2020, the Democratic Party is being sabotaged by a left-wing extremist. Our nation is being destroyed. If Bernie Sanders is the Democratic nominee, we will have a choice of which saboteur we prefer in the White House. To put this as delicately as possible, the United States of America is in deep shit.